From the early 1980s, the so-called Ciskei homeland offered onlookers a continuous flow of political drama, along with strange and at times tragic stories. The apartheid government ultimately opted to establish a Ciskei state that was ostensibly independent from South Africa in 1981, yet was intricately linked to the regime through a web of funding, dubious politics, secretive police forces, and military involvement. The self-styled chief, Lennox Sebe, had a long history as a civil servant in the homeland and garnered support from chiefs appointed by the apartheid regime. After a referendum on independence in December 1980, Sebe was named president and by 1983 was given the absurd title of President for Life.
Ciskeians reject independence if it means the forfeiture of South African citizenship. And secondly, the Ciskeians seek to retain and develop their nationality as Ciskeians. If in working out its future relationship to South Africa, it appears that something less than full independence would offer a compatible and acceptable formula which these aspirations can be satisfied.
From the beginning, the Ciskei lacked legitimacy. The puppet Sebe was compelled to govern with what many termed an iron fist, implementing harsh laws against political dissent, trade unions, and even his own brother, Charles. Tensions between the Ciskei and the Transkei regime, led by Matanzima, also sparked multiple coup attempts, culminating in a full-scale military assault on the Ciskei Presidential Palace in February 1986, which involved white mercenaries and resulted in the death of a soldier from the Transkei Defence Force. Joshua Oupa Qozo was born in Kroonstad on March 10, 1952, to parents Anna and Fikile Joel Qozo. His father worked as a skilled laborer and was a religious minister. At a young age, Qozo was sent to live with relatives in northern Transvaal. There, he enrolled at Siyabe Community School and completed his primary education up to Standard 5. After that, he returned to Kroonstad to attend Phomolong Junior and Budibeng Senior High School. He dropped out in 1972 to work as a ward at Kroonstad Prison and earned his matric certificate through correspondence in 1975. While at Kroonstad Prison, he was selected to study at Baviaan Sport Training College. Upon finishing his studies, he worked for the prison's department in Klerksdorp before joining the South African Defence Force, where he served as a soldier and chief clerk of the South African Defence Force's 21 Battalion in Lenasia, near Johannesburg. In 1981, Qozo left the South African Defence Force and joined the Ciskei Defence Force.
Qozo came to being and got created by nobody else but by the South African Defence Force, a military intelligence undercover operation that fed him information that made him more paranoid than he normally is or was. I mean, the man is now so sick mentally that he can't even come and give evidence.
In January 1990, Qozo received the Order of Good Hope upon completing his term of service. In March of the same year, he executed a coup in Ciskei while the chief minister, Lennox Sebe, was on a state visit to Hong Kong. Kwame Sebe, the chief minister's son, who was also planning a coup, was detained along with other government officials. Following the unsuccessful coup, 4 ministers from the Ciskei cabinet were placed under home detention. On March 4, 1990, Brigadier Qozo spoke at 2 rallies, one in Bisho and the other in Dantsane, near East London. Following his speeches, chaos broke out in Ciskei, resulting in damage to many shops and offices linked to the Ciskei government and Sebe's family. The new government, led by Qozo, announced the suspension of the constitution and the dissolution of the presidency. They declared that they would take direct control of the nation through a state council, which would assume all executive and legislative authority in Ciskei. The executive committee, headed by Qozo, accused Sebe's administration of extensive violence and detentions that compromised the rule of law. Additionally, the government faced allegations of corruption and misuse of public funds. Due to the ongoing violence, Qozo sought help from South African security forces. In November 1990, Qozo asserted that he had stopped a coup that was supposedly orchestrated by Colonel Guzana and former military council member Major Peter Hauser. In February 1991, Brigadier Aaron Jamangile, the leader of Ciskei's defense force, was arrested after being accused of attempting another failed coup. In the middle of 1991, Qozo established the African Democratic Movement to challenge the ANC's influence in the area. By December 1991, he was among the delegates at the Convention for a Democratic South Africa to discuss the country's new political framework. In March 1992, Qozo accused the African National Congress of plotting to remove him from power in Ciskei.
It was September 1992. Negotiations between the ruling National Party and the ANC were fully underway. Two homelands, Transkei and Venda, sided with the ANC, but Ciskei and Bophuthatswana were digging in their heels. In protest against Ciskei leader Brigadier Oakard Gozo's continued dictatorship, the ANC planned to march on Bisho on the 7th of September. They wanted to occupy Bisho for a day. Gozo was determined to stop them.
During a period when the nation was grieving the victims of the Boipatong massacre on June 17, 1992, the Bisho massacre further deepened the dire political climate in South Africa. This tragic event occurred on September 7, 1992, in Bisho, during rife negotiations between the African National Congress and the government of South Africa, led by President F.W. de Klerk. In advance of a planned protest march in Bisho, the ANC delivered a memorandum to the government urging the replacement of military leader Brigadier Opa Qozo with an interim administration that would facilitate democratic reforms in Ciskei. President de Klerk dismissed this request, arguing that Ciskei was outside South Africa's jurisdiction. In response, the ANC organized a large protest march aimed at removing Qozo from power. A gathering of 80,000 individuals, led by prominent ANC leaders such as Chris Hani, Cyril Ramaphosa, Steve Tshwete, and Ronnie Kestrels, assembled outside Bisho to call for the termination of military governance and the reintegration of the so-called Black Homeland into South Africa. When the protesters attempted to cross the Ciskei Defence Force lines from Transkei to reach Bisho, Qozo's soldiers were ordered to open fire. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission reported that Colonel Mkhosana ordered the soldiers to fire, leading Rifleman Gonya to use a grenade launcher. This violence resulted in the death of 28 marchers and 1 soldier, with over 200 activists injured. A mass funeral for the victims took place on 18 September, and a placard from the event expressed the community's feelings.
There was a rumor that the Ciskei government there was going to be a coup, that the MK was going to take over, that it's going to take all of us.
We applied to the court to forbid the march because information was received that the marchers would be armed and that they had no interest in any peaceful march to the stadium or wherever, but they were going to storm and destroy Bisho.
The Goldstone Commission was established to probe the massacre. Justice Richard Goldstone criticized both sides for their involvement in the violence. The Bisho massacre led to a new phase of negotiations between F.W. de Klerk and ANC President Nelson Mandela, culminating in the signing of a Record of Understanding on 26 September 1992, which set the stage for the continuation of stalled formal negotiations in 1993. Regarding the massacre, ANC President Nelson Mandela said, "Each one of the people who lost their lives at Bisho yesterday, 7 September, was a unique human being, the daughter or son of some mother, the father or mother of some child, a person linked to a home, to a community of relatives and friends who had loved, cherished, and nurtured her or him for many years in the hope of a continuing and shared future." A monument to commemorate the role that these activists played in the struggle for freedom was erected on the site of the massacre in 1997. On 22 March 1994, Qozo contacted the South African Foreign Minister, Pieck Botha, and resigned as leader of Ciskei, the Transitional Executive Council appointed 2 administrators to govern Ciskei until the first democratic elections. Following the first post-apartheid elections in South Africa, Ciskei and all of the other homelands were reincorporated into South Africa on 27 April 1994.
As far as the present situation is concerned, in Bisho, I would like to commend Brigadier Qozo for taking the wise step that he has done. There will now immediately be a start of the reintegration of the Ciskei with the Republic of South Africa. Minister Sam de Beer.
Hundreds of people packed the East London City Hall in November 1996 to hear a plea for forgiveness from former Ciskei military ruler, Oupa Qozo, who told the Truth Commission he did all in his power to avoid the Bisho massacre in 1992. Qozo stood up and turned to look at the massacre victims and their families seated in the first 3 rows of the 800-strong audience before telling them, "Please forgive me. I know that I do not deserve your forgiveness. I want to tell you from my heart that I never wanted your people to be killed. I will not be surprised if you reject my apology. You have lost loved ones." The mother of the only Ciskei soldier to die on the day of the shootings began wailing loudly as Qozo told the commission he doubted ballistic evidence which suggested the soldier was killed by a fellow CDF member. She was escorted out of the hall by commission officials and sedated. Questioned on the involvement of the then South African government in the events which led to the massacre, Qozo said he rejected suggestion that he had been a puppet of the whites used against blacks. "I owed no allegiance to the Pretoria government. On the contrary, I had a lot of fights with them. They definitely did not like me. I did not condone apartheid. I would never have done anything they said I should do." Qozo was also questioned on his continued insistence that CDF troops acted defensively in opening fire on the ANC marchers. "I don't think they would have shot if they were not feeling threatened," he said. The commission heard evidence which suggested the CDF troops panicked when they were confronted by a group of marchers moving towards them. Eastern Cape Commission head Bongani Fenga described Qozo's submission as very disappointing, saying he had divulged no new information.
I was not involved in the security operations at all, which was left to the various commanders of the security forces in whom I had the fullest confidence to handle this situation. From where I was not watching nor could I see with any clarity what was occurring in the vicinity of the march. The security forces were aware from the outset that they were to prevent the marchers from occupying Bisho, as even after the magistrate had permitted the march, the ANC alliance had made it quite clear that they did not consider themselves bound by the restrictions. I heard the noise and chanting of the marchers. Subsequently, I heard sounds which I initially did not identify as being shooting. The Bisho massacre had occurred. I consequently learned about the shooting incident and that lives had been lost.
But it was too much for the mother of a slain Ciskei soldier.
Soldiers protect each other.
Just a minute, just a minute.
Since the arrival of democracy, Qozo's life has become unbearable. In 1996, before he could testify at the Truth and Reconciliation Commission regarding the Bisho massacre, he was hospitalized for psychiatric treatment due to depression. In 1998, he faced conviction and a fine of 10,000 for illegal diamond trafficking. In 2001, Qozo was shot in the head and back while attempting to shield traditional healer Keke Konondo Mama in Middledrift. Mama later passed away in the hospital following the incident. Qozo was thought to be Mama's bodyguard, a role he took on after experiencing significant financial troubles. He was hospitalized again after burning his hands and face. This time, he had mistakenly refilled a heater with petrol instead of paraffin, which burst into flames. The fire caused an estimated 60,000 rands damage to his farmhouse outside King Williamstown. Currently, he resides in a rundown house on his farm, which he has retained despite investigations by Judge Willem Heath into land deals of the Ciskei government.